A day before Chief Justice N.V. Ramana is set to retire, he presided over a slew of very crucial cases in the Supreme Court today. Now, the court has agreed to review two provisions of the PMLA law, namely sharing of the ECIR or memo that explains why someone is being arrested by the ED, and the part of that law that puts the burden of proof of innocence on the accused instead of the investigating body. So let me just take you through all those four crucial cases. In the Bilkis Bano case, the Supreme Court has issued notice to the central and Gujarat government. These parties will not have to respond to the petition which challenged the remission of the 11 convicts who gang-raped Bilkis Bano and murdered her 3-year-old daughter. In the case concerning a breach of the PM security in Punjab in January this year, the court said that the Firozpur SSP failed to discharge his duty. And in the Pegasus Snoopgate case, the Supreme Court said the committee it had set up could not find any confirmation of Pegasus spyware in the 29 phones that were probed, but 5 were found with malware on them. So let's get to that last case I mentioned in a bit of detail today on the show. Now, you may recall that the Pegasus case had rocked the monsoon session in 2021. For days, opposition leaders held up proceedings demanding answers to news reports that claimed India had used Israeli spyware called Pegasus to snoop on phones of at least 300 citizens, including opposition leaders, journalists, activists, and even former Supreme Court judges. So what exactly happened then? This is the sequence of events. In May 2019, WhatsApp first identified a vulnerability in its software. At that point, reports came out that devices of certain Indians were also affected. So this was a global breach that WhatsApp talked about. On 18th July 2021, the Pegasus report was published and a list of targets revealed. It was around that time that petitions were filed in the Supreme Court. And answers were demanded that there should be a probe into what really happened. The government at that point refused to respond through a detailed affidavit that the court had asked for and said it would be too public and could compromise national security. In October of 2021, the Supreme Court of India set up a technical committee supervised by retired Judge Justice R.V. Ravindran to look into the matter. This committee finally submitted its report last month. It's 3 parts of that report, and on the basis of that is what the Supreme Court order from today rests. So let's come to the key point. What does the Supreme Court finally say? And I'm just concising it for you. So the biggest question before this committee was Pegasus software made by a company called NSO of Israeli origin used on Indian phones. 29 mobile phones were taken up by this technical committee. And the Supreme Court today has said that there's no confirmation of this Pegasus malware in those 29 phones that the committee took up for scrutiny. 5 of those phones, though, were detected with malware, but it could not be proven that it was the Pegasus software on those phones. The Supreme Court was also clear in saying that the government has not cooperated with the committee and said that the scope of the review is limited in matters of national security, but this does not mean that the state gets a free pass every time. The Supreme Court went on to say that it will decide further what parts of that report, that crucial 3-member committee that is set up, headed by Justice Ravindran, what parts of those reports can actually be made public. Now, why is this story important? It's because the Pegasus spyware and its use or misuse by various governments is something which rocked the world. So what is the Pegasus spyware? It was developed by a company called NSO, that's an Israeli cybersecurity firm, and can be used to snoop on any person via a smartphone. And this was what was so scary about the Pegasus, that it can very insidiously be used to infiltrate anyone's smartphone. Once it's in, the device can be remotely controlled. There is no action or click required on part of the target. That means it's not like you have to click on a shady email or open some strange, WhatsApp or message for this to happen. It can just happen seamlessly. And once that's done, data can be accessed. Mails can be accessed. The phone, the camera on the phone can also be accessed. The NSO reportedly sold the software to certain governments. It has not revealed to who. The NSO, though, made it clear that whoever it was selling to, the end users were government and law enforcement agencies. So there was no scope ever of someone privately buying this Pegasus and misusing it or using it or doing anything with it. It was clear that the clients were always governments. Now, which governments? Was the Indian government one of those clients? Was it used on Indian phones? All of these answers, are they still out there after the Supreme Court order, or has the debate ended? To speak on this, I'm first joined by Jagdeep Chhokar. He's one of the petitioners in this case which the Supreme Court was listening to. Arvind Gupta, head and co-founder of the Digital India Foundation, is with us on the show today. Saket Gokhale, spokesperson of the TMC, is joining us. And I'm also joined by Khushbu Jain, lawyer in the Supreme Court. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Chhokar, good evening. Let me come to you first. With your response on what the Supreme Court has said today, many will argue that the case is closed. No Pegasus was found. All of those allegations that the Indian government used Pegasus to spy on citizens have now been proven false. Is that your interpretation?
I'm afraid not. The case is not closed because there was a malware found on 5 phones. Whether it was Pegasus or not has to be determined by comparing that signature on the phone to the Pegasus signature. And if the technical committee claims that they have the Pegasus signature, then it will have to be discussed how they got it and what it is. Independent of that, one of the very important issues in the case is that my name was on a list of 300 people, which was part of a larger list of about 12,000 people across the world who were intended to be targeted by Pegasus. Now, my name being on the list tells me, or at least makes me feel, that my right to privacy, fundamental right to privacy, had been violated. Now, fundamental right of privacy has to be guaranteed by the state. So the government of India has the legal responsibility to assure me that my right to privacy has not been violated. That is independent of the fact whether my phone was infected or not. The third issue, which is of extreme significance, as the government refused to cooperate with this technical committee. Now, the government is the only entity or authority in the country which, according to the company NSO, could have purchased this malware. The representative of the government, the Solicitor General, in the hearings in the Supreme Court, refused to say whether the government of India had purchased this software or not. Now, that is the most fundamental question in this entire issue. And that question has still not been answered because the government refused to cooperate with the technical committee. The fourth issue is that if the software, the malware was purchased, does not leave any mark on the telephone that it infects. It is supposed to be designed to self-destruct itself. So to say that it was not found on any phone is of no consequence.
But then how will you prove it, sir? How will you prove it, Mr. Chhokar?
The question is not...
In the absence, can you continue to say that, yes, you were targeted?
I continue to say that because that list contained internationally people like the President of France and some other very, very important people whose phones have been confirmed to have been infected. And there are also people in India whose phones have been tested by other agencies other than the government and they have been found to be infected. Those people did not give their phones because there was not adequate guarantee of what would happen to their phones once they are given. But if the government refuses to cooperate with this committee, where the government is the only agency in the country who can say yes or no, then what is the value of this report of this committee at all?
Okay. Arvind Gupta, I'd like you to field that question because today the narrative is that case closed, baat khatam. The Supreme Court says that their committee did not find any sign of Pegasus on those 29 phones. Malware was found in 5. We don't know what it is. So the story is over. But is it truly? Can we say without doubt that Pegasus was not used? And if that's the case, why isn't that clarity coming from the government?
Well, I think, Tamanna, with due respect to Mr. Jagdeep, I think he's contradicted himself many times. He first says that the malware is a self-destructing, that this NSO Pegasus is self-destructing, and it would not be found. Then they should have not agreed to this committee. And then they're saying if the 5 malwares that are found, the golden signature will match. So I'm not really clear on what what the petitioners or anybody would have wanted. But let me give you my view. And as a technical expert who's written on this also and has spoken in the past on this, I can tell you that many people when the Supreme Court formed this committee, it's filled with experts. It's not a Government of India committee. It's an expert committee. And they were set out of the task. They asked in public, submit your phones if you think you've been impacted by this. And that 29 phones have been submitted. This is what we are hearing from the media. I wish there were larger numbers. And those phones, after, as you rightly said, 5 have found some malware on them. Probably not the Pegasus software, because otherwise we will be having a very different debate today. And malware exists on hundreds of phones today. I mean, people click all the wrong links and all the wrong websites that they don't want their families to see, and they end up having malware on the software on their phone. So I don't know how there is an association being made that this malware is.
So 1 minute, Mr. Gupta. So you're saying this 5 phones having malware is no big deal because malware is just a very generic term and could be any kind of malware which could be found on any phone.
That is exactly my point. I mean, there is so much of malware that exists, and the global ransom world, the cyber ransom world works on malware, and there is a lot of other things that you click on certain links that we all know, and automatic tweets start getting sent out. All those are resultant of malware. I've been very solid behind this. There is this list making a juxtaposition of lists that happen to be globally being circulated of 50,000 and associating with it with India was a nefarious design that many learned members of our members of the public fell for. I don't think so. There is, I've maintained this steadfastly and technically that there is a chance that this software, this Pegasus was used in India at a large scale, and it went undetected. So I'm a firm believer of that.
You're saying Pegasus never made it to India?
Let me just complete with that. The timing of this whole thing last year was a little suspect. This list of 50,000 is a bunkum list. We don't know where it came from. And I mean, nobody, if you think about this highly secure company called NSO, it's not going to declare the list of its clients that it was targeting through other government. So this is not something that is credible. And I've always said this in the past. And now, after a year worth of effort, this committee has come back after collecting information from the public. And I totally actually support the government's stance of security and
no, but Mr. Gupta, just one point, and Saket Gokhale wants to come in. I'm sure Mr. Chhokar wants to respond, but just allow me one point. If this is all bunkum, rubbish, or just made up, then why is the government being so diffident about coming out and saying,
that is what I was,
hey, we never bought Pegasus?
I could foresee your question coming up, and I'm telling you the answer.
But allow me to ask, no, sir. But why shouldn't they just come and say that we didn't buy Pegasus? We don't believe in this.
Well, I think Tamanna, you're forgetting that this has been said, that the government has clarified that we, as far as they're on the floor of the House, I remember one of the learned ministers saying that as far as their knowledge exists, this software doesn't exist. This is not.
No, they didn't say it in court, sir. They didn't say it in court.
I'm going to repeat this again. Just because some international NGOs, dubious bodies, let me put it very clearly, suddenly start saying there is a list that exists. India has done this, and India is on that list that has been done. And let's say this 2 minutes you park this issue of Pegasus and NSO away. Tomorrow, the same thing, and we had a lot of questions being raised about Rafael, for example. about what it is, how it was costed, how it was priced. I don't think so. The government, whether it's in India or anywhere part of the world, and I'm being very clear, is going to disclose on the pressure, on international pressure, things which are security and national strategic importance.
Okay,
and I actually commend the government for taking a very, very correct stance, because this could be a start, and it could lead to a lot of other things which are really, really, really important to national security. So I maintain the government has taken the right thing. And it has been, the public scrutiny has been there. So why blame the government? The public has to...
All right, Jagdeep Chhokar, your response to some of the points that Arvind Gupta made. First, he says that you've contradicted yourself, that if Pegasus self-destructs, then how can anyone ever find it? And how did people in other countries, like you have claimed, found it? And the second, that, you know, why should the government come and disclose things which could harm national security?
First of all, let me say that the panelists before me said that why did these people agree to this committee? The question of agreeing or disagreeing to the committee did not arise. The Supreme Court formed this committee. Number two, the situation is contradictory, because if it were not contradictory, there would be no doubt about it. It is contradictory because whether these agencies which have brought this list, and we know where this list came from, it came from a person within that company who was a whistleblower. All that information is known. Whether one believes it or not is one's individual decision. Now, in some countries and even within India, there have been certain agencies which claim they have found Pegasus. Those agencies need to be involved and questioned. But the government, who say that we cannot say whether Pegasus was bought or not bought. Yes, honorable ministers have made statements on the floor of the House and Parliament, and I say with great pain that certain of those statements have not been found to be true. If that was so...
Found to be true by whom, sir? I am not...
Can I complete? If those statements are true, why didn't the government give those statements on affidavit in the Supreme Court? Why did the government say something to the Supreme Court in a sealed cover? The government is not willing to take the Supreme Court of India into confidence, and then it expects citizens to have confidence in it.
Okay.
That is very difficult as far as I can see.
All right. Quick response from Arvind Gupta to the basic question of, you know, why at least can the government don't make your, you know, information which could harm national security public. But could the Supreme Court have been taken into confidence? Today, when the court says that there was no cooperation from the government, that is quite a scathing remark, isn't it?
Well, the court will need to explain what cooperation they were expecting. I can't comment on that till the time we read the full thing. But at the end of the day, I'm glad Mr. Chhokar has actually, and you all are acknowledging that the minister has made a statement on the floor of the House. And what else is the government? Please now give me the right to complete my answer. And technically, this has been a witch hunt. You said it started in 2019. We are sitting in 2022, 21. A committee was formed. There has been, and nobody denies that NSO doesn't exist rest of the world. I mean, there could be an NSO operation happening from another country into India. Who knows? I mean, there is some two people could have been targeted because of their interest in some other country. Some journalists could have been targeted. Nobody can comment on that. But as far as there is no proof that there was any NSO operation that got conducted in the Indian geotag. And I think if there was proof, it would have been submitted. Those phones would have been submitted. I'm really not finding it surprising when somebody says 300 people were infected in India, 400 people, new numbers keep coming up, and only 29 phones were submitted. I still remember when the deadline, there was an ad in the newspaper. Till then, only 2 people had gone ahead and submitted their phones. So I think the rabble-rousers use this opportunity to create, and really, very frankly, the timing was very suspect and disrupt Parliament. And I think there is a lot of international conspiracy behind it. I've
Okay,
said it in the
we're back to international
and
conspiracy.
this is-
Saket, your response. Have the rabble-rousers got their answer today?
You know, it's hilarious. I'd like to break this down into 3 points. Mr. Gupta said, oh, everyone here agrees that the minister denied it on the floor of the House. Yes, because we all watch Parliament. But remember that the minister denied it on the floor of the House because there is no consequence for lying on the floor of the House. You have parliamentary immunity when you're a member of Parliament. If the government honestly wanted to deny it, it should have given, as Mr. Chhokar said, it should have given it on an affidavit. How difficult is it for the government to say that, no, we did not deploy Pegasus? It's a single one-page affidavit, that's all. So the fact that the government constantly went with this, we neither confirm nor deny sort of a thing, that clearly shows that there is a smoking gun there, number one. Number two, this list came out of nowhere, it's bunkum. No, it's not. This list was disclosed by a whistleblower. And one fact that even the Supreme Court did not talk about, no one's talking about, is this list is of prospective targets in the year 2017. The committee started looking at phones in the year 2021. As Mr. Chhokar was also saying earlier, this software self-destructs. This software can be destructed remotely. This list of people who are infected with this Pegasus spyware is a 2017 list. It wasn't a list as of 2019.
Saket,
when it was an old
Arvind
list.
Gupta's question that why didn't they submit their phones?
Again, let me come to that again. In terms of submission of phones, now when this committee was formed, first of all, there was no consensus on what basis the Supreme Court is forming a committee. There has to be, for instance, there have to be testimonies that have been taken, that should have been taken into record. Citizen Lab of Canada is one of the premier institutions that has been working on detecting Pegasus on phones. They have put out extensive reports showing that not just Jamal Khashoggi, but also his aides, and Jamal Khashoggi was later murdered by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Their phones had been found with Pegasus. They found it in France. There was an investigation conducted. The question of handing over phones, I mean, the Supreme Court, first of all, in its own wisdom, it's not clear why it decided to form this committee under a retired judge. We don't know how many technical experts were on this committee. As Mr. Chhokar also earlier said, Pegasus was not found as what they're claiming. No one knows what Pegasus looks like in the first place. How many international experts were deposed? Which is why the demand that we made as the opposition right from day one was that this matter should be examined by the Standing Committee for IT and Communication, because a parliamentary committee has the right to call anybody for deposition. People would have been more comfortable giving their phone to a parliamentary committee. Because this is
Saket, it's a bit of a stretch. I'll let Arvind Gupta respond, but it's a bit of a stretch to say that a committee formed by the Supreme Court would not enjoy the confidence of those bringing in an accusation.
But let me respond to that. I'll tell you why.
Just let me complete my point. It's very clear that the Supreme Court committee did have technical experts on it. It was being overseen by Justice Ravindran. So to assume today that there were no technical experts and, what did they do for all of this time is a bit of a stretch. Yes.
Let me respond to that. If you think that's a stretch, fine. But remember that the same Supreme Court had formed a committee for examining the farm laws and talking to farmers, a committee which extensively consisted of only people who had written op-eds in praise of the farm law. The farmers never accepted that committee. So it's not a stretch to say that just because the Supreme Court has constituted a committee means that people should be trusting it. The farmers.
So you don't trust the Supreme Court committee. So Arvind Gupta, here the claim is that who trusts this committee? Why should we trust this committee?
Yeah, I actually find, it's whenever you want the Supreme Court to be the final educator, then Supreme Court can be trusted. I am nobody to comment whether Supreme Court. I have firm belief that there is a role of Parliament, the role of Judiciary, and I think whether good or bad, whatever things happen, we have to accept that. And that is, at the end of the day, Mr. Saket Gokhale, whatever, today he represents TMC, is claiming that Supreme Court cannot be trusted. I disagree with that completely.
I did not say Supreme Court cannot be trusted. Do not twist words.
No, so whatever you said, my friend, I'm not here
so you did hear that. What are you responding to?
Okay, one minute. He's saying on the record, he did not say Supreme Court cannot be trusted. So he's making that clear on the record. Arvind, please finish your point.
So I'm very clear. The Supreme Court has done a due diligence. The government stand has remained the same, and it is what
the government stand? What is the
He
government
heard you
stand?
patiently. That's
Whatever
not
it
fair.
was that
He
it was
heard you
maintained.
patiently, Saket. Let him finish. Yes.
He's gotten more time than anybody put together, yeah.
Because
My
it's
friend,
one
I am
versus
not
three.
asking for time.
It's
I am
one
not
versus
asking
three.
for
You and
time.
Jagdeep Chhokar
You
on the
just-
same side. It's only fair that he responds. Yes.
Let me just, I'm defending because I'm here as a technical expert. Don't shout at me, Mr. Gokhale. You may do it at other places, not
Sir,
here.
I'm only asking what is the
No,
government
no, no.
Let
stand?
him
Let me
answer.
respond. Let me respond.
Okay,
I am
yes.
not here to hear you. Okay, so there is enough people. Technical committee. The Supreme Court had empowered this committee to enlist any more members, seek any advice, and a lot of people, a lot of process. And this the whole detailed report, by the way, will be made. Whatever parts of it will be made public. Then we can debate it further. The point being that I think enough time of the parliament, sessions of the parliament today, unnecessary discussions which have led to the country losing valuable parliamentary time.
No, Mr. Gupta, how much time Parliament lost is not, okay, let me just set the frame of this discussion.
Let me just complete, Tamanna.
No, I urge you
please.
not to go back into what time was lost by Parliament, because the frame of this discussion and why we're doing this today, Jagdeep Chhokar is back and he wants to respond. And then you finish, is about privacy of citizens of this country. Do citizens of this country today have an assurance that Pegasus or ABC spyware or whatever will not be used to snoop on their phones by any powers that be, including the central government? So in the frame of that question, do we have that security today?
That is definitely the case, that there is, and I don't indulge in whataboutery, but I can say that the government neither has the means or this intent, I think, to do this. Secondly, I'm very clear on this, that this 50,000 people report or whatever the Citizen Lab work has been, and the Amnesty International work has a lot of technical holes in it. And I'm very clear, Mr. Gokhale or Mr. Chhokar are technical experts, they can comment on it. The way attribution was made to India was not via any other. There's a list that exists. There's attribution was made due to some DNS entries called DNS snooping, and that DNS snooping led to certain names, certain countries' names popping up, and 2 and 2 was made into it. This has technically not been proven, and I stand by that.
Wouldn't the Supreme Court committee have said that then? Wouldn't the Supreme Court committee have said that then?
The Supreme Court committee has said that there is no technical proof of any malware found. That's the end of discussion.
No, but they have not said that the route to make these claims was an error, as you have claimed. And if there is a group
I'm not saying they have said that. I'm saying this is my analysis. This is my analysis that the DNS probe methodology, technical methodology that was deployed to
they didn't use DNS probe.
All right. I want to come to Khushbu Jain. Khushbu, thank you for your patience.
That is not accurate.
1 minute. Let's listen to Khushbu Jain. Khushbu, thank you for your patience till we weave through all of this. But I was keen to wait and speak to you on the larger point that I'm trying to make here. Why do we care about the Pegasus Snoopgate story? Is the question about safety of Indian citizens and their privacy. Today, is there a law that safeguards citizens from any such attempts in the future, or if they have been in the past, of use of specialized software to see what you're up to, what you're thinking, what is on your phone, what is on your views, and then possibly use that information against you? That really is the crux of the story, isn't it?
Absolutely. So let me put it, there are two aspects to it. One you're talking about is a surveillance. The second is hacking. Now, when I talk about surveillance, see, there is no doubt that every government across globe exercise some degree of surveillance operation as a part of its intelligence outfit or national security or public safety. But at the same time, I would not deny that citizens' right to privacy has to be protected at any given point. Now, the second aspect, now coming to surveillance, which the government can do or all the government across is doing, you have laws which grant permission to the government. Now, if I specifically state the specific section, Indian Telegraph Act specifically talks about that communication surveillance in India is allowed. Now, the second aspect, which is your IT Act, this was enacted to deal with surveillance of all electronic communications. That specific IT Act also talks about under section 69 that for the procedural safeguard for the interception, monitoring and decryption rule information of 2009 specifically was enacted to give a legal framework for electronic surveillance. So surveillance if done with due procedure, following there are rules and regulations prescribed therein that who can and by what process and how it has to be done is allowed. That's a legal thing. Now, second aspect which we're talking about is not surveillance, it's hacking. Whether that is protected, we're talking about security. No, it is a punishable offense. IT Act does recognize that if you intercept or if you hack somebody's phone via illegal means using any kind of software is a punishable offense under the IT Act. So that's where the focus is.
In simple layman terms, Khushbu, for my viewers, if the government suddenly decides you tomorrow or me or XYZ, our phones need to be surveilled or our communication needs to be under surveillance, do we have any kind of legal remedy to this, or are they well within their rights to do it in the garb of national security?
This is where the question comes that legally, yes, they are allowed, but whether those mechanism is there to safeguard, whether there is an accountability, where there is a transparency. That's where the question should be, that yes, they can do it, but when they do it, do you and me have a right over there? No, there are certain aspects where we do not have a right. But if this gets start using, because of the words used are too vague, which can lead to an arbitrariness, hence it will give a draconian power to people who are in access to that. Hence, where I think we should focus more on the procedural aspect to it, on the accountability part of it, on the transparency part of it, that this should be part of the record that this is done for XYZ purpose. This cannot be made public, because the moment you make it public, these are done for the national security purposes at time. And if it's out there in public, that cannot be done. The entire purpose would be defeated. So you cannot all the time claim that my right to privacy is being getting infringed, because see, when it comes to national security, when it comes to public order, right to privacy takes a little back seat compared to both of them. So I do agree with you that this cannot be misused under the garb of national security or public safety or anything. So there should be procedural safeguard in that regard, and accountability should be there so that people stop misusing them. And see, there are countries where these kind of interceptions happen, but they happen in a proper procedure. There are sometimes...
What is our procedure? Jagdeep Chhokar, you wanted to come in on a point that Arvind Gupta was also making, but I want to understand that what is the procedure? Today, at the end of the day, that's the question, right? It's not only about Pegasus and NSO and this one incident. It's about whether we are under surveillance and do we have a right to know. Yes, Mr. Chhokar.
Fundamental issue is that I have no doubt that in terms of if there's a question of national security, my right to privacy can be overruled. But it can be done only under a specified protocol and regime, which, if at all, it must be known to the highest court in the land. This is a case where the government of India has shown repeatedly that it has no confidence in the Supreme Court of India by repeatedly not answering what the Supreme Court wants to know. And therefore, to say that the government has done the very right thing, there is national security. National security is the preserve of every citizen of the country. And the Supreme Court of India is the highest legal institution. Under a rule of law, no government can be beyond and above the highest court in the land. The government could have told the Supreme Court in confidence.
Yes.
And had the Supreme Court told us that we are satisfied, if Pegasus was not purchased by the government of India, we would be very satisfied.
All right. Why didn't that happen?
The Supreme Court says the government has not cooperated with its committee. Before that, the government did not cooperate with the Supreme Court on the floor of the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court is not taken into confidence, how can the citizens be expected to believe what the government is saying? The Supreme Court does not believe it.
All right.
Quick, Tamanna.
Yeah. Oh, yes, Saket, quickly.
Yeah. So there is one fundamental issue that I'm sure, Ms. Jain will agree as a lawyer. One fundamental issue we are ignoring here is that the Supreme Court is not an investigative body. Time and again, we have seen people with whatever happens, people running to the Supreme Court. There are court-monitored investigations, which is very different from the court appointing a team. The Supreme Court is a judicial body. It's not an investigative body, number one. Number two, let's not focus only on Pegasus in isolation. Remember, we are also talking, there have been reports which again in Parliament we as the opposition have wanted to debate on, that in the Bhima Koregaon accused case, evidence was planted on their computers. There have been very credible allegations about that. Yesterday, Peter Zatko, the whistleblower at Twitter, has said that the Indian government appointed an agent to sit in the Twitter office on their payroll when protests were going on. Right from the beginning, it's very funny that Mr. Gupta mentioned Rafale as well, because during the Rafale issue, if I remember clearly as well, what the opposition said was this is not in the domain of the Supreme Court. This requires a parliamentary probe. If you look at the United States, the House and the Senate hold hearings. They have the power to subpoena people. These are fact-finding committees. This is within the domain of the parliament. And the fact that
but that's not an investigating body either. That's not the standing committee is not an investigative agency either.
Absolutely, it's a agency.
Let me just add one point. Sir has a phone with him. Why not properly give it to the file an FYR, give it to the police, let the investigation, let the forensics be done.
Which sir are you referring to, Khushbu? Who are you talking to?
The petitioner herein.
Yeah, Mr. Chhokar, yes.
Absolutely. Why? If you have a doubt, you have a phone, because he's a victim. He claims that he has been a victim, and you know his phone has been attacked, or there's been part that Pegasus is found in his phone, or his that Amnesty International. So all I'm saying is, if there is, why not give your phone to the police station? Let investigation be done. Let there be a proper procedure. Let there be a proper procedure. Let me just add one more point. Let me just add one more point to it. Let me just finish it off. See, all you're asking over here is whether government bought Pegasus or not. Why government is answerable to you on that? Whether it is used on you or not is a question you should be asking.
No, the question was not whether they bought it or not, Khushbu. The question is very clearly whether they used it or not. Jagdeep Chhokar is saying, "Mere phone pe use kiya hai." I want to know.
I want to come in here.
Okay, 1 minute, one by one. I'll come to you, Arvind Gupta. I'll come to you, Saket. But because Khushbu Jain has asked a specific question of Jagdeep Chhokar, I think he must respond to it. Yes.
I was asked this question also by the technical committee. And I told them, do you really believe that my local police station house officer is competent or capable of investigating this? And they said, we agree with you, but you please suggest what should be the process.
1 second,
and I have made those suggestions.
You don't believe in police. You don't believe.
Let him finish. Khushbu, let him finish. Khushbu, let him finish, and then you respond.
What exactly are you believing in? Amnesty International is what you're believing in. You're not believing
Ms.
in court.
Khushbu Jain, I need to
Ms.
finish
Jain, let him
what I was
finish.
saying.
Let him finish, Khushbu Jain. 1 minute. Yes.
The technical committee itself.
That's not Amnesty International. Sorry. To investigate your phone.
Khushbu, let him
If
finish.
you are not willing to listen to me, then I don't need to speak.
I apologize.
Yes, please.
The investigating committee said that we agree this may not be possible. You please give us your suggestions, and I have given them fairly exhaustive suggestions, which I will not be able to repeat right now. I hope they are form of the report, they are part of the report that Justice Ravindran has given. But let me say with greatest respect to you, Ms. Khushbu Jain, that the SHO is not capable of investigating this complaint. And I dare say, if you had this kind of a problem, you perhaps might not go to the SHO himself, talking personally. So
no,
this is
I think the prayer should be that Government of India should focus more on creating a capability inside where our SHOs and our police or our investigators are capable to handle this kind of.
No, but that is a diversion then. Yes, Arvind Gupta has been waiting patiently. Arvind Gupta wants to come in. Yes, Mr. Gupta, 1 minute. Mr. Gupta, to the question of if we go beyond Pegasus, Saket Gokhale has taken some more examples. The fear of a surveillance state at a time when data is so widely available. We still don't have a data protection law, viable data protection law in place. And the question is, why is it taking so long? So do you think that these questions need to be answered in a very serious manner? And it can't always be national security, so we don't have to tell anyone.
No, but I'll make 2-3 comments which are important. And I think one thing we all can agree upon, hopefully, is that India needs a very strong Data Empowerment and Protection Act that we have been working on. It was for personal data, and now non-personal data has been added to it. And that's why a better law is coming up. With all due respect to the Parliament, the standing committees and the joint committees that were made, they just took too long. the technology has changed too much in the years that they have debated at, and nothing has come out of it. So that's why it's been withdrawn and a new law is being worked upon. But that, I think, will really help us as citizens get the right empowerment.
Should we end it on this? Should we end it on it where everyone agrees?
That is blatantly false. Please, if you give me 20 seconds, Tamanna.
What is patently false? That we don't need a Data Protection Act.
A law.
Mr. Gokhale,
Let me answer your question.
A political party, I understand that.
Let me answer your question.
Oh God.
Law has nothing to do with technology at hand. The IPC is from 1860, which is being used right now.
So what is false? Do you not agree that we need a law which gives protection?
I don't understand what Mr. Gokhale is shouting about.
Number one.
Boss, this is not a political debate I'm doing with you. You can keep shouting. I'm not here to hear your political.
The whole idea about why is the government answerable? It shocks me that in 2022, we're living in a world today where the FBI is raiding the house of the former president of the United States because he took out classified documents. And I can't believe there is a person from the legal fraternity here saying, why is the government answerable? We are not asking the government who they are snooping on. All we are asking them is, did you buy this spyware, this malicious spyware from the NSO group?
They're saying no.
Yes or
They're
no?
saying no in Parliament. Court is saying we have no proof. Has the story ended there? No. I'm going to wrap this here. Because it's not going anywhere anymore. I have to wrap this here. Jagdeep Chhokar, Khushbu Jain, Saket Gokhale, it impacts. And it's important, Khushbu Jain. It's important because we as citizens deserve to know if the government has with it a spyware which can come into your phone, read all your messages, and you have no clue about it, and whether the government intends to use it. That's important.
Tamanna, let me assure you, there will be a proof of it. There will be a proof of it. There is enough like WhatsApp figured out the WhatsApp was being compromised. Somebody will figure it out. This 29 phones would have not been submitted. 300 phones would have been submitted. You would have found
I think we should take the debate beyond Pegasus to ask about data privacy. That law needs to come sooner than later. If the government needs to spy or surveil on phones, there has to be a process for it where at some point someone can hold them accountable. I want to end with that, and I want to thank all of you for joining us on the debate today. Let me move on to the other big national story.